Please welcome Jonathan Coulton.
Hello. My name is internet musician Jonathan Coulton. This is like some sort of Homeric epithet, like swift-footed Achilles, or the wine-dark sea, or rosy-fingered dawn. Internet musician Jonathan Coulton. Sometimes when I see this phrase in print, I want to call up the person who wrote it and say, you know, you could just say musician, and that would be fine, and I think people would know what you mean. And maybe that's unfair because, of course, this used to mean something. You know, if you were an internet musician, this meant you were embracing the new music economy. You were probably selling your MP3s on your website. You were engaging with fans on social media. You were probably loosey-goosey with the file sharing. But that obviously is the direction that the whole industry headed. And so this is no longer a particularly meaningful distinction. So as the meaning of this phrase has faded, it has come to mean other things. And I'm not always sure what they are. This is one option. Indie musician Jonathan Coulton, I'll take that. Independent, I sound plucky. And I feel like that's a point of pride and relatively accurate and descriptive. There's also this possibility, which I am less excited about. You know, this sort of suggests that the term musician is somehow too grand. And then it needs to be qualified in some way. And I have my own problems with this word niche when it is used as a genre, which I will get to later. And of course, my worst fear is this one. It's like suddenly the internet becomes the most important part of what I do. And, you know, oh, he's that guy who does those funny songs about monkeys and robots on the internet, which doesn't feel like a complete description of me. And, of course, goes back to this whole thing where much of the world still thinks that the stuff that happens on the internet is somehow less important than the stuff that happens everywhere else. Now, I feel a little weird talking about this stuff because, I mean, honestly, what do I have to complain about, you know? And frankly, this is something that I really wanted. There was a time when I really wanted to be described as internet musician Jonathan Coulton. And so I don't want to come across like I'm complaining. I'm not complaining. I am complaining. But I guess what I mean is I'm only bringing this up because I feel like this is a thing that a lot of people in this room are going to run into if they haven't already, this kind of prejudice against internet stuff. And you know, but it's a very complicated, real thing that I think about. And of course, when I was starting this talk, I Googled the phrase internet musician just to make sure that I wasn't crazy and that, in fact, it was used with my name sometimes, because that would have been embarrassing if I yelled about it for 20 minutes and it wasn't true. And I was, I had to go 4 or 5 hits down before I found my name. And then I looked at the top, and it was internet musician Jack Conte. And I was like, yeah! I was jealous. And I was like, why are you jealous, you dummy? What's the matter with you? So it's complicated. I don't really feel qualified to talk about the future of the music business because, I mean, honestly, who knows? It's already kind of here, and it's always changing. So I'm going to give you some straight talk about feelings today. Because I do think, as an independent creator, this is something that you really need to pay attention to if you're going to make it work for you. Before we get to all that, to give you the context, I'll do the origin story thing. I moved to New York City right after college, and I had the intention of becoming a professional musician, but in those days, the music industry seemed very difficult to break into, and it was kind of a scary thing, and I was lazy and fearful. So I didn't really do it. You know, I bought the books, How to Break Into the Record Business, and they said things like, you gotta make a great demo tape, and then you gotta bring that tape to the office of the record company and get it to the A&R guy. All that sounded exhausting and terrible. So I bounced around for a while, a few odd jobs, and had a couple of bands that never went anywhere. We rehearsed very little. We played pretty infrequently. Our friends would come and see us. I couldn't really see any way of breaking into things, and I got tired of being poor. So I got one of those job things, and it was kind of an accident. I wrote software, and I never intended to be a professional software developer. In fact, computers were kind of a hobby for me. So it was kind of an odd thing where the hobby and the work suddenly switched, because this was the thing that they would actually pay me for, which was fantastic. It was also interesting and fun. And I could finally go to parties, and when people asked me what I did, I didn't have to hem and haw about open mic nights and coffee shops, and I could just say, well, I make database software for executive recruiting firms. And that would end the conversation pretty handily. And as I was working this job, you know, it was so comfortable that I stayed there for 9 years. And every year I would say, all right, Coulton, you really gotta do this. You know, you really gotta leave and go back to the music thing. Because I was just doing it in my spare time, making cassette tapes and giving them to my friends, you know. But every year I would look at that and I would say, no, I can't do it right now. But then, over the course of that almost decade, a lot of things changed in the world. One of them, my friend John Hodgman, who I've known since college, quit his job at a literary agency to become a full-time writer, which was very thrilling and seemed incredibly reckless and brave. He started a monthly reading series called the Little Gray Book Lectures, which was a sort of a weird literary variety show. He invited me to come and play songs that I had written at these shows, and I sort of caught the bug again because I was in front of audiences. I was playing things that I had written, and if they were funny songs, they were laughing, and if they were sad songs, they were feeling sad, and it was like, oh, right, I remember, this is really great. And then, of course, John went on to become super famous with the books and the Daily Show and the PC and the, you know, he's a comedian, actor, writer, and to watch him build this career literally out of nothing was super exciting and very inspiring. Also, the internet changed. You remember MySpace, right? By the time I was at the end of my time at this job, there were MP3s, there were podcasts, there were blogs, the beginnings of social media. There were stories about bands making it on MySpace, and there was this free global broadcast technology available, and it was a very exciting time, and it seemed like you could maybe sit around in your room, write songs, put them on the internet, and then something would happen, and you would make money. That was my theory, anyway. Another thing that happened is I became a dad, which changes a lot of things. You know, I felt my mortality much more keenly than I ever had before, because literally here was the creature who was going to replace me when I died. It was clear that I was running out of time, or maybe had already run out of time. I was 32. And it also seemed very important to be brave and to set an example and to be the kind of person who made good decisions, the kinds of decisions that I would want my daughter to make. I did not want to be sad dad with unfulfilled dreams. That seemed like a terrible way to go. So I quit about 6 months after she was born. Talk about responsibility. Not much of a plan, but I started this project called Thing a Week, where I recorded a new song every week, posting them on Fridays for a year. And it was an exercise in sort of forced march creativity, pretending that this was my job to write songs and feeling what that felt like. It was an exercise in getting used to finishing songs and publishing songs and putting things out there that maybe were not the best thing I had ever made. It was a bit of a stunt. I was hoping that it would attract attention and I would somehow be able to use that attention to something with money. I don't know. Again, not much of a plan. I was in this studio, a room about the size of that desk. I recorded everything myself. I played everything myself. I learned as I went. I made some terrible, terrible mixes. I wrote some bad songs. It was kind of excruciating, quite honestly, but wonderful at the same time. You know, you run out of ideas in the first 4 weeks, and then it's blank slate every time. And sometimes amazing things happen. Most of the time, garbage happens, but it was still thrilling. And over the course of that year, this is Google Trends for my name. Over that year, I got lucky a couple of times, and specifically early on, my cover of Sir Mix-a-Lot's Baby Got Back had a viral moment, which gave me great hope in later moments of darkness. I felt like if I could do that again, and then again, maybe we had something. And a little more than halfway through the year, Code Monkey happened and was slash-dotted, which was really exciting. You know, that song is about a sad software developer, loosely autobiographical. Ultimately, there was just sort of this upward trend in all the metrics that made me feel like by the end of the year, if I kept pushing, something good would happen. And I remember the month where I ran the numbers and realized that I had earned enough money selling music to pay for the babysitter who was taking care of my child while I was pretending to be a rock star. And that felt very good. And then, of course, Portal happened later, and you know, I won't bore you with all the sort of details of monetization and stuff like that, because I feel like that's been talked about much more smartly than I could talk about it. But this is basically what it looks like now. I've made a living ever since. I'm basically, you know, a musician. You know what that is, right? I sell music, I tour, I sell merchandise. You know, because I have this amazing supportive fan base, I get to do all sorts of fun, unusual things that I might not otherwise be able to do. I do this fan cruise, this annual fan cruise called JoCo Cruise Crazy, which still seems like a ridiculously impossible thing to say, fan cruise. But it's a bunch of nerds on a boat for a week in the Caribbean. You're all invited, February 2014, a bunch of other entertainers. And it's really like, you know, you talk about community. This is like all these people together. I barely need to be there. And like Andy was saying, you know, I set up this structure and they make all the fun. And it's amazing to hang out with them in that context and watch them meet each other and create things together. They make all these, they do like pickup a cappella groups, and they do dance lessons, and it's fantastic. Early this year, my friend Greg Pak, who writes comic books, he and I did a Kickstarter for this graphic novel called Code Monkey Save World, which is based on a bunch of my characters from my songs. That did incredibly well, exceeding all of our expectations. We just delivered the first issue to backers last week. Should be available to the public in about a month. And then Ask Me Another. I get to do this radio show, this NPR trivia quiz show. I'm sort of the Paul Schaefer type, the house band / co-host. And it literally happens 6 blocks from my house. So that's a good gig. And you know, it's an amazing job. It's insane. I never in a million years would have imagined any of these things at all. And I feel very fortunate and very lucky. And yet, you know, this sort of sticks to me. And there, you know, I have a lot of self-doubt. I have a lot of moments of self-doubt. And I think, like many creative people, there are times when I say to myself, gee, I wonder if I have ever done anything that is any good. you know, it's hard to always feel fully confident that you've made something that counts and that is going to last. And so the times I feel that way the most are when I rub up against this dismissive attitude about internet stuff. And I'll give you an example. I was on the Planet Money podcast, and this guy named Alex Bloomberg came over to my house to interview me about what it was like to be a musician, an internet musician. And you know, we talked about how the business works and how I got started, and he took that conversation to some colleagues at NPR, some music critics, and said, so what do you guys think of this? Here's this guy using these methods and having great success, and what do you think this means about the music industry? Is this a way forward for other musicians? And those other NPR people were like, I don't know. I mean, it's not really a replicable business model. He's kind of a fluke. You know, not everybody can write a song about a monkey and put it on Slashdot, which I guess is a good point. But it's not as if that was my actual business model, you know. One of them went so far as to compare me to a Snuggie, saying, I know, Jonathan Coulton is like a Snuggie. He's like a blanket with sleeves that we didn't all know we wanted. So, you know, that's fine. You know, you notice that she didn't compare me to like an iPhone or something like that, right? And this kind of thing hurts my feelings, I'll be honest. It doesn't feel great to have somebody saying that about this body of work that I've made that I really care about. And so, you know, the Snuggie is a ridiculous thing. It is a blanket with sleeves. It's absurd. And I feel like that is many people's attitude about niche stuff, you know, niche, this idea of niche. Oh, that's a niche thing. That's niche culture. And so, you know, here's a game. We're going to play a little game. This is called, click the clicker. This is called Spot the Niche. Okay, first of all, I should say, this is a terrible slide. This slide did not come together the way I wanted to. The numbers are poorly sourced, as you will see. A lot of apples and oranges comparison. Doesn't actually make any sense. Bear with me. Mad Men, a show on television. Very good show, critically acclaimed, arguably an important part of television history. Wikipedia tells me 2.5 million viewers on average per episode in season 6. Duck Dynasty, 8 million. This is a show where people in beards yell at each other. 8 million viewers per episode. That's according to my wife, who works in television. She thinks it's probably about that. I believe her. She's my wife. The Bed Intruder song by the Gregory Brothers, the Auto-Tune the News guys. Some brilliant commentary on news media culture and hilarious. 117.6 million YouTube views. So take a moment, ignore the deficiencies of my slide, look over there, and ask yourself which one of these is best described as niche culture, all right? And then ask yourself, why do I think that? What do I mean when I say that? Now, obviously, it's a problem. I'm comparing an hour-long TV drama to a reality show to a YouTube video, right? That's problem number one. I'm also comparing viewers to views, which I know is not the same thing. But you see what I'm saying, and if you don't, then let's pretend the point of this slide was, why don't more people watch Mad Men, because it's a fantastic show. Okay, so here's the pep talk. Here's what I say to myself over and over again in these moments of despair and self-doubt. And I hope that this has relevance to you if you are perhaps an internet journalist or a web photographer, or maybe you have an online business. I don't even know if people say that anymore. That sounds like somebody's grandpa. How's your online business? But this is how I talk myself down when I start feeling like I've never made anything that's any good just because this NPR music critic thinks I'm a blanket with sleeves. Number one, be a Snuggie. A Snuggie is a thing that everybody didn't know they wanted, and now they know they want it. That's great news for you. So, how do you do this? Well, you know, that's a whole talk in and of itself that I'm not going to give right now, but it involves, you know, making stuff that you care about, making something that moves you so that you can then move other people. And it means doing that over and over and over again until you get better at it. And is it going to work? I don't know. Probably not. I don't know. You know? Sorry, probably not. You know, for every Snuggie, there are thousands of blanket clothing combinations that didn't really work out so well, that you've never heard of. But for God's sake, you have to start here. You know, if you have the best placement in the world on the iTunes store, it's not going to help you if what you're making is not reaching people. It's not going to stick unless it's sticky. These are the kind of insights you came here. Somebody write that down. I'm going to use that later. Number two, you're doing it right. This is a trap that a lot of people fall into, this idea of thinking that there is some magical thing you can do that will solve your problem and get your stuff out there into the world. And you know, in the music business, it's this whole myth of next level. Oh, you gotta get to the next level. There is no next level, you know? So don't let anybody tell you that you need to do this in a certain way. My last album came out, I said, well, geez, you know, there's all this old record industry infrastructure. There's all this stuff happening out there that I'm not a part of because I'm just this internet guy. I wonder what will happen if I hire a publicist and a label services person and a distributor and we do some in-store marketing placement stuff. And the answer is, I spent a lot of money, nothing really happened, and I didn't get any data on whether it was working or not. At the end, I was like, why the hell did I do that? Because, you know, the beauty of today is that you can build this thing however you want. If you don't want to be on Twitter, don't be on Twitter. If you don't want to use Creative Commons, don't use Creative Commons. You don't have to have a Facebook page. You don't have to be in magazines. Like, there's so many different ways you can do this. And the chances are you've already decided what works for you. And I'm not saying don't experiment. You know, try things out. But don't feel like, and don't let anybody tell you that there's a thing that you have to do in order to make this work. There isn't. And finally, fuck them. There's all this other stuff happening out there that has nothing to do with you, and that's okay. You know, I'm not going to win a Grammy. I have accepted that, even though in the back of my mind, I still feel like that is the ultimate measure of success somehow in the music business, is to win a Grammy. It's not. Like, the Grammys are increasingly irrelevant. Someday they'll award a Grammy to a record that sold 10 copies, you know? And everybody's gonna clap, and, but the rest of us aren't gonna be even making albums anymore, you know? So I think it is really important to think about the fact that once you get something going, it's about you and that circle of fans that you have. It's about you making the best thing you can make, and it's about working with those fans and communicating with those fans and that whole community, all that boring stuff that we've heard in a million talks. And I'm not saying don't grow your audience, but I'm saying it's less about pushing yourself out into other circles, and it's more about bringing people into your circle. And stop measuring yourself with other people's rulers, whether it's likes or retweets or Grammys or whatever. Those are all other people's metrics, and they don't matter to you. Here is the only metric that you need to care about. You have a control panel, and it has all these little dials, all these parameters that match up to your various needs and desires as an independent creator. There's a knob for money, and there's one for fame, and there's one for artistic integrity, and there's one for being a good dad, and there's one for saving the planet. And your desires and needs are going to change over the course of your career. And what you need to do is constantly be tweaking those knobs and looking at this output. Is what you're doing making you more happy or less happy? That's it. Don't look at all that outside stuff. This is your quarterly performance report. This is your boss. Thank you.